You're watching 101. We're talking with Dr. Anwar Ibrahim from Malaysia. Dr. Anwar, you climbed up through the ladder in the government system, becoming the Deputy Prime Minister. You received accolades for your work as Finance Minister, international accolades. Then it all went wrong with Dr. Mahathir, who was your mentor and grooming you for the leadership, it seemed. It started to go wrong. At what point did you realize that's what was happening?
Well, not that abrupt or sudden. I've seen the differences surfacing, particularly when it comes to the manner the economy is being managed, even before the crisis. The general analysis by political scientists, whatever, seems to refer specifically to the crisis.
The Asian crisis of 97.
The Asian crisis of 97, 98, after the convulsions in the financial system and the attack on the baht in Thailand that affect the ringgit and the rupiah later in Indonesia. But to my mind is how we manage. For example, I have called for a more open sort of a discussion, debate, moving with the times because economically it was quite comfortable. We had a surplus budget and I thought that we should be more circumspect and more careful and cautious in our expenditure. Whilst the economy being propelled upwards, we need to also anticipate possible convulsions in the international economic system. This was, listening to views from the East and the West and looking at the experience of Mexico and Russia and Argentina. As a finance minister, you tend to be quite conservative and cautious.
But Dr. Mahathir didn't agree.
He didn't agree because he had his penchant for these mega projects. He wanted to have, the tallest building in the world, the longest bridge in the world, the biggest dam in the world, and the most spectacular city in the world, including his own palace. So some, of course, I can see. I'm not saying that, I was a great hero trying to present the case that everything is rosy. No, I was very conciliatory. I considered, because after all, he was the boss.
You believe that Dr. Mahathir engineered your downfall effectively then. How do you believe he did that?
Well, when the Chief Judge, the Inspector General of Police, and the Attorney General were all in cohort, I think cannot be just by chance. It has to be under clear instructions of the Prime Minister. I mean, these were trumped-up charges. They were. I wouldn't want to go to that in detail, but clearly, in terms of how the judges were picked, how decisions were made, how some very corrupt judicial officers and judges were specifically chosen and given the task, how even the Inspector General of Police came to me and had to apologize and said, please settle this case with the Prime Minister politically. All this is bullshit, this was his term, in terms of allegations. So what else? I mean, he was very clear to me.
I read an interesting article that described also the kind of charges they put against you, you believe were actually suited to turn the Malaysian people against you, because corruption itself would have opened up a can of worms, you say, that it would have revealed too much of the whole system, and that, womanizing itself wouldn't have been as bad, but accusing you of homosexual crimes and corruption and everything together would actually be worse in the Malaysian eyes. To what extent do you believe that's true?
It's clearly a shrewd, dubious move to try and paint a very dark picture of me, contrary to what was presented as a person who's practicing Muslim and trying to talk about ethics and morality and reform in the country. So the whole intention is to portray to the Muslims that, look, this guy is morally bankrupt and corrupt, and therefore it's not suitable to lead the country.
How were you treated in prison? You had, 6 years, a lot of it in solitary confinement. And initially, you actually were physically beaten and so on.
Yeah, I was assaulted to near death by the Inspector General of Police, who later on, after international outcry, was convicted and sentenced to about 1 month in prison. But that was very difficult because I think I knew at that time they left me in the police cell without cause for medicine or appeals, and that was a very, very difficult period.
You did turn your time in prison to useful. I mean, I'm digressing a little bit here, but you read Shakespeare's complete works, what, 4.5 times?
Yeah, but later when I was moved to the prison guards were very kind. In fact, to be fair, even police officers, many of them were very kind. I mean, this is contrary to the attitude of one or two of the few conspirators in the police force who has since resigned or some since promoted even to the position of deputy IGP at present. But other than these few, the general police officers handling the case were very kind, very civil, and exceptionally polite. They were very helpful, but there were very rigid guidelines. There was continuous 24-hour surveillance, whom I talked to with instructions that nobody is supposed to talk to me, and I was put in a solitary confinement. In the first few months, I had difficulty. This was when friends all over the world, neighboring countries, Habibie of Indonesia, Estrada of the Philippines, and at that time, President Clinton, particularly Al Gore, Albright, and the rest came in, and many others. I know many Arab leaders who wrote personal appeals to Dr. Mahathir. Then later on, he allowed me to have access to books. And of course, then you have all the time in the world to read.
Having come out of prison, you seem to be fairly philosophical, and you're quoted as saying, you know, I forgive, but I won't forget. What benefit will you get out of remembering?
Because remembering means the excesses must not be repeated. The same draconian laws are in practice, are still being implemented. There are still many in political detention in Malaysia. So I see you're forgetting means you are forgetting the crimes perpetrated by the present regime against our people. Forgetting means you can see how the media is being orchestrated to manipulate facts and malign people. But forgiving means I don't want to pursue this. I said there's no malice. What is done. It cannot be undone. But we have to move on. I mean, we talk about general Malaysians. We have to move on. I mean, this is a great country with a great potential.
So assuming you bump into Dr. Mahathir Mohamad now, what would be the interaction?
I'll be very civil. I'll ask, how are you? And I've not seen you for a long time. How's your health? How's Asma, the wife? That's it.
There's no lingering issues or anything?
No, I don't intend to pick up an argument or quarrel with him.
How's your relationship with the current incumbent, the incumbent Prime Minister, Abdullah Badawi?
Well, Abdullah, to his credit, allowed at least the judiciary not only to take its course, but certainly to allow me to be free, which speaks quite a lot about the judicial system. You know, there's a change in regime, there's change in decision, but the problem remains. But Abdullah is, of course, personally very more conciliatory, more pleasant, and I met him and thanked him personally for allowing the judiciary to be a bit independent.
Now, though you were able to eventually successfully able to fight the homosexuality charges, the other issues of corruption and so on have meant that you can't participate in any kind of political activity till, I think, April the 14th, is it, 2008. Now, where does that leave you as far as your ambitions? Do you want to try for that top position again?
Well, the judiciary was used, and the public knows that. The public was aware of the fact that the judiciary was used to put a date that would cover 2 elections. And I assume that they will have the elections just before April 2008. But notwithstanding that, I think we will have to work to ensure that there's a coalition or broad coalition of opposition parties work and come up with a common agenda for reform.
What is there in your life personally that you would like to achieve that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Well, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing now, teaching, lecturing, reading, writing. But I think Malaysians deserve something better because it's a country which is huge, enormous potential.
But beyond the politics, is there anything in your life you say, there's something I should have done or I wish I could have time to do now, which I might do?
There's a dangerous truth to that because when I was in prison, I used to think, look, when I was busy, I was always complaining, look, I don't have much time to read. And then I was given this time. So I'm a bit more cautious now, telling that what I need to do, particularly if I say, no, I need more time to read, then suddenly I'm plunged into prison. They have all the time in the world to read.
Now, how do you think you will be remembered by Malaysians and perhaps people outside Malaysia? Do you think there will be a difference in your legacy at home and outside?
I don't know really, but that's not for me to presume. I mean, I just do my best. My old history teacher in school used to say, try your best and damn the rest. Oh, it's a bit crude.
Dr. Anwar Ibrahim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.